Hello and welcome to Heart and Health, a new Rangers podcast focused on your well-being. My name is James Donaldson, a regular on the Heart and Hand Network with shows like Psychologists, The Preview, and Simply the Rest. And I am joined this evening by a regular on Four Lads, Sheryl Ritchie. Sheryl, how are you doing?
I'm all right. You're going to need to get used to this, James, because this is the kind of inane nonsense that I drop at the beginning of every Sunday show. I think the polite answer would be, yeah, I'm great. And I am halfway through a 48-hour fast. So I am getting joy from absolutely nothing in life. All I can think about is food. I have no strength and I just want to go to my bed. But other than that, I am loving being with you tonight.
I love that for an introduction show. We've gone straight into fasting. Okay, let's put a pin in that for another day. But Sheryl, when you aren't engaging in a 48-hour fast, for the benefit of the listeners to Heart and Hand especially, what is it that you do in the Rangers podcast world?
I am very fortunate to have joined Four Lads, I think almost 2 years. Yeah, it's coming up for 2 years ago. And I primarily work with the Sunday show boys, but I occasionally get taken out of my cupboard midweek, particularly over close season. I am absolutely delighted to be part of the Four Lads network, and I was going to say usually enjoying it, not so much this season, but what I do enjoy is the kind of interaction with people who watch us, the chat that I get now more than ever from people when I go to the football with my son, and just having a football team that drags us up, pulls us up, drags us down, and gives us plenty to talk about.
Yeah, so as we'll have guests now as a listener to Heart and Hand and Four Lads, this show is going out across both networks because Sheryl and I usually feature on those networks. So for the benefit of everyone listening to Four Lads, as a regular who's never heard of my name before, my name is James Donaldson. I have been involved in various fan-related Rangers things, mainly around the time of the administration when I was one of the higher up admins at Rangers Media Fan Forum, editing 72 magazine. I was on We Are the People podcast with Todd Van Allen for briefly. Well, I was actually on the podcast for its ultimate ending and demise, but never mind. I played my role on whatever that ended up as. And then a little bit of an interim break as life lifed for me. And I started getting involved in podcasts or creating podcasts to share on Heart and Hand for the past couple of years, starting off with the FA Cup show and then getting a few little side gigs through the guys who do Simply the Rest and The Preview, and then making up my own show with Dr. Alex Oliver, Psychologist. And now, Sheryl, we are bringing these audiences Heart and Health. And before I ask you why you're here, Sheryl, to talk about this show, I just want to say this is something I was trying to bring this show maybe through as like a Psychologist side project for a while, but I wasn't quite sure of the name. Dr. Alex and I, as the listeners to Psychologist will know, that we can't always get our schedules aligned. We are quite infrequent in our podcast, but they are bangers whenever they do come out. But I didn't think that asking Dr. Alex to try and come up with another podcast with me was going to help. And it just so happens that you popped up with a little bit of an idea.
I did. And like I kind of alluded to before, there is a certain level of damage that can be done to your mental health by Rangers. So I have always kind of had this thought that I would like to expand into covering that. I haven't encountered in any other pods across any other networks that space other than the way that you guys do it so beautifully on Heart and Hand. And if you are a Four Lads patron or follower, I absolutely urge you to go and look out Psychology or episodes because they are wonderful. And that's actually how I first came into contact with James. We kind of connected over that, didn't we? Because I am a massive fan of not only yourself, but Dr. Alex and the way that you have broken Rangers down into a kind of completely different take that I hadn't experienced it. But when I did listen to your pods, I was just so interested in that kind of different dimension to Rangers, that psychological side to it, but also as a fan as well. I love how you guys explore both sides of the psychology of Rangers.
Yeah, and Sheryl, I'll just mention briefly for the audience's benefit that you and I are, as people, we've been through some life events in the past couple of years and maybe have some, if not exactly common ground, but we have we have some sort of shared experiences or shared emotions relation to various experiences in our lives, and that has been quite a connecting point for us as we've known each other. And it is Cheryl's intention, I have always believed, then, listener, to be a bit of an agony aunt for the Rangers fans. I mean, she just loves to give people help as well and good advice. And I think there are plenty of Rangers supporters through Heart and Hand, and I imagine through Four Lads, who have plenty going on in their lives. So we don't intend to bring you Rangers news, Rangers updates. I mean, storylines may be relevant to us as it is on Psychologist, but this is intended to focus on the well-being of the listener, the well-being of ourselves, and ultimately the well-being and the storylines of the guests we wish to bring to interview. And Cheryl, we've got a couple of big fish ready to come in the first couple of episodes.
We do. From Four Lads, we are extremely lucky that Stevie Clifford has agreed to join us to talk about his elements of his mental health. And just similar to what you said there about us, the road that he's been down, challenges that he's faced, and how he's ultimately overcome them.
That's right. And also from a Heart and Hand. I mean, we're not messing about here. We're going straight in with the two biggest dogs. David Edgar will also be joining us, and this will be a closer look, I hope for a closer look at his storylines and his history with alcohol abuse and alcoholism, something which he has been in recovery from for, I believe, around 15 years now. David will correct us when he comes on to talk to us about this, but I've been listening to Heart and Hand ever since it first cropped up. And I probably knew of Davey before that because of being on the forums and those sort of things at his time with the RST. And it was through listening to the podcast, I guess, probably by then, as he was newly in recovery or more newly in recovery, listening to his stories. Often they're very humorous, his storylines about being drunk and drinking. But I've always wanted to be able to get I've always wanted to go deeper into his life story that way and actually bring some learning lessons, bring some lessons and bring some inspiration and motivation for anyone else who may be listening who may struggle with that sort of thing. And alcohol and football are completely synonymous, and Scottish football and Rangers seem to make this even more synonymous. And I just know there are listeners who will be drinking alcohol at a level that might not be sustainable for them just now. And if we can bring an interview or a story or a take on something that can give someone some support in their life and maybe just stop and think for a minute, I think it could be a really valuable thing, Cheryl.
Yeah. Do you know what? I have been very fortunate to be in David's company. And in terms of speaking about the issues that have been involved in his life, he's so open and he's so honest about them. And I found him a hugely, I don't know, I can't even think of the word. He was just such a brilliant person to tap into because, and I have to be honest, it's been at halftime in the press room while I've been stuffing a macaroni pie into my mouth. So to get the opportunity to actually sit with him and ask him questions around his addiction, because as you said, James, there will be people who will hopefully join us who absolutely are at the forefront of addiction battles. But the point of view I came at when I spoke to David was asking him for advice around someone who was close to me at the time. How do I deal with that? You know, I've noticed this. And he was such an inspiring person to talk to and listen to, even from that point of view of not directly being an addict myself, but being in the company of an addict. So I just think he's going to be wonderful.
Yeah, totally. I've never met Stevie myself or had any interaction with Stevie, but I'm actually, from everything you've said, really interested to speak to him and get to know him as well, because these guys are, you know, they're at the forefront of fan engagement these days. And I was trying to do my best 15 years ago, trying to get into press conferences and things, and nobody cared. But nowadays, these guys are in there, and they've built themselves incredible platforms that we're lucky enough to feature on. But yeah, no, thank you very much, Cheryl. I'm really looking forward to speaking to both those guys. And for you then, as a listener, this isn't just going to be big interview stuff that we bring to you. We actually do want to hear from you. You will be invited to write to us on a anonymous basis and we can create anonymous ways of you doing that if sending an email or anything is not your thing. But just in terms of, let's just cover some ethics involved in this as well, Sheryl. So just so the listeners know, in my personal, sort of my professional life, I am a personal trainer, sports coach, and massage therapist, but I'm also have a background in additional support needs education. And this has led to me being qualified in mental health first aid. And it's something that I do anyway. Like, I'm always that guy that finds someone fallen over on the ground and checks if they're okay. I'm fortunately, this has only happened a few times, but I have been the guy on the motorway bridge, wrestling people back over the sides on a couple of occasions. And I'm fortunate. I have a privilege of being a very large, strong man, so I can do that. But, I always seem to find myself in these spaces, even outside my own flat here in lovely old Bonnybridge, which I'm glad to be leaving soon, interrupting fights when, like, don't kick him in the head. I'm always that guy who's happy to go outside and say, can we not kill this guy, please? That'd be all right. So I can't help myself but try and support people and help people when they are in danger. And I just thought the idea of this show that Sheryl wanted to do could be something that's really helpful for people within the Rages community. And that's something that I care about quite deeply as well, Sheryl.
Yeah, do you know, and I think that's how you and I first bonded, wasn't it? Because we kind of connected over social media and very quickly began to talk more about our life experiences, which you mentioned earlier. Slightly differently from you, James, I have an educational background, but my interest in people or psychology or fixing things comes from the fact that I was the only girl on both sides of the family amongst a huge amount of cousins and my brother, etc. So I think from the day I was born took on the role of the person that had to fix everything and sort everyone out and clean everything up, which eventually led me to a career in education, where I am exceptionally passionate about mental health, particularly the mental health of young people, and just the challenges it brings us nowadays in terms of social media, etc. Completely different from the time that you and I were growing up. But the fact that I'm in a position to be able to help people, particularly young people, and support them on their journey through life, I feel exceptionally lucky with. I also feel exceptionally lucky to be able to do it with my own son as well. And like you say, to be able to offer that here and to share our experience as well, I think it's going to be massively valuable for me.
Yeah, so there you go, listeners. We are highly responsible people and we are here to help. So if, it's always very scary to send that email or something, and I'll make sure that my email, james@jctcoaching.com, is attached to the show notes on every episode. And you can contact us if there's anything you wish for us to focus on, or you have a problem you're sort of dealing with. We really want to bring that. And if there's any Rangers and football takes that come with it, then all the better. But Sheryl, that's kind of probably enough about us as people, as a little bit of an introduction to who we are. People will hear from us in greater depth in a more focused episode in a couple of weeks' time. But Sheryl, first, I just wanted to ask you, we've had a long and arduous season, and I know people have already got the countdown clocks on for the return of pre-season, and we have a signing through the door. But I did speak to you a little bit throughout the season. You're often very kind, giving me sort of match day updates, because I can't always make it. I can't always stay attached to the action with my professional life. But Sheryl, your well-being, your health, then, without having to go into such a long answer, just a little brief summary, how did Rangers impact your health and well-being last season?
Do you know, it's really interesting because this was my kind of first proper long year with Four Lads. So I think it's impacted me in two different ways. As a podcaster, it's been extremely challenging, but I have really, really enjoyed it. This year, I have been fortunate enough to do more press-related stuff, either through Four Lads, or my other hat is occasionally working on Follow and doing the match day stuff there, a little bit of match day reporting as well. So in a personal podcasty sense, it's been really, really interesting, very challenging, because I've had to, I find myself wanting to work on things and to improve on things. I am probably naturally around that stuff quite a nervous person. So it has forced me to do an awful lot of work and an awful lot of feedback and take on board people's comments. As a fan, so my other Rangers hat is a mother to a 10-year-old who, unfortunately for him, I have indoctrinated completely and utterly in the way that my father did with me. Our entire lives kind of focus around Rangers, and if it's not Rangers, it happens to be my son's football. He plays football too, so our weekends are just going from Alex's football to Rangers, and then focusing on one and pulling them all apart. So as a supporter, it's just been a really difficult season, hasn't it? It almost feels as if it would have been slightly easier had we not had that end of year, beginning of year boost that pulled us back up and got us believing and got everybody excited, and certain daft female podcasters putting out things on X saying, I know that we're going to win the league after I'd had one too many drinks in the museum. But it's been very, very difficult in that sense, just because we did come within touching distance after a horrific start, which gave us a lot to talk about. But a very, very difficult season in that sense. To see it go, I think, James, so badly wrong when it just completely fills my life and my thoughts and my son's thoughts in the way that it does has been really, really difficult. So I think coming from it, from the sense of a podcaster, it's been very positive in terms of my development. But as a fan, who's completely obsessed and immersed in it, and it takes up all my waking thoughts, it's been a very, very difficult season. I think what I would be interested to know from you has, compared to how you used to view the football and be Mr. Podcast and being things, has it been easier for you to take now that you, as you just said, are that step removed from things? Has it been a slightly easier process than the one that I've had this year?
Yeah, well, I'm very black and white in everything that I engage with Sheryl. So there's very little grey area, and my partner gets very frustrated with me sometimes. This may be part of a slightly like undiagnosed neurodivergent episode, perhaps one day, but things are very black and white for me. And if to say that I was an obsessive completely, I mean, I grew up as a Scottish child in England my whole life, and the Rangers was the promised land. Ibrox was the promised land. Like, I'd never been to this place. I got to come see Scotland versus Denmark in 1996 as my first trip to Ibrox, and Brian Laudrup scored the winner. My first Rangers game was actually 1993 when Craig Moore scored the winner at Pittodrie, sat in the wrong end. So, like, these were very rare occasions to get back up here. And then my third game, I think the game after Barry Ferguson left in 2003. And then by the time I was 18, I could drive. I would come up. By the time I was 21, I could afford a season ticket. So I lived on my own, had a job. Like, I would come up all the time. I was on the buses from Carlisle, the West Cumbria Loyal, the Stoke-on-Trent guys, like all these great times that I had. And yes, there was a hell of a lot of drinking being done in my time at that age. So I loved the drinking as much as I loved Rangers and the football, to be honest. But it was also like I was playing catch up. I wasn't raised in the area. Football to me growing up, Rangers games to me growing up as a kid was 810 medium wave on the radio, which as soon as you get over Shap on the M6, you can't hear much of. It gets very crackly. That's what I had to grow up with. So I was playing catch up, and it was a complete obsession. And I am the sort of person that runs from obsession and hyperfocus to hyperfocus. And Rangers became a very serious hyperfocus. I met a Scottish girl as I intended. I moved to Glasgow as I intended. I had Scottish children as I intended. So this is I've literally made this my whole life basically, and had my season ticket. I lived in Renfrew, going to my season ticket at Ibrox, like it was in the dream. But then life does change. You move further away, and the houses change, marriages end, and you know I'm a full self-employed now, and you can't follow the football, or I can't certainly follow the football in this way. And so what that means is, and that's a very long way to actually getting to an answer. Welcome to this podcast when I'm speaking. It's a very long way for me to say, because I'm so black and white, my business now comes first. And I would say engaging in podcasts with the guys on the preview and Alex on the Psychologist, this is the best way that I actually stay on top of things. I listen to the daily update on Heart and Hand every single day. I wish it was 7 days a week instead of 5, but it's not. That's where I get my knowledge from, and engaging with the guys. These are the only Rangers people that I know. Yourself, Dr. Alex, the guys on the preview. These are the only Rangers people that I know and interact with now. I don't go to games particularly often. My parents have just given up their season ticket as well, so that avenue's closing. I only live out in Falkirk area, but it's just when you are a single parent, when you're self-employed, and there's a new partner with 3 new children that aren't mine, like there's a lot going on. So what this means is I will switch off when things are not going well. So I believe I'm usually working all day on a Sunday, and we have a lot of Sunday games. So I won't watch the game. I will not find out the score. I'm basically going to work till 6 p.m. or so, look after someone's kids, mine or hers, until 9 p.m. or so, and then maybe I'll go home and try watch the game back in full, which you can usually do via Rangers TV or your catch-up service on whichever TV company that you're officially paying for. And that's how I do it. I try and avoid the score. I hate finding out the score, but I tell you what else I hate. I hate staying up to midnight and we don't bloody win. That is the worst feeling. It feels like such a robbery of my time, of my effort and my emotions. And we've had numerous times this season looking at younger men than me now. I'm 39 years old, and in my mid-20s, I was a dickhead. So who am I to judge them? But I'm judging them. I'm giving up all of that time to watch these lot, and they're really letting me down. So what that means is when it was on the cusp of, it was do or die, and it was the first game of the split. I checked the score. I knew I had to check the score at 6 o'clock because I couldn't face doing the whole the parenting thing, going home 9-10 o'clock, sitting down to watch this game when I've got work at 9 the next morning. I couldn't face doing that, knowing that we were going to lose the title that day. And it's exactly what happened. The game was still actually on flash scores. I think it was 90+3, and it was 3-2 or something to Motherwell, whatever the score line was. It wasn't even completely done, but I was just done. The next game, I believe, was the Old Firm game. Again, I worked on the Sunday, just checked flash scores when I finished. I was like, yeah, thought so. I checked out. Checked out at the Motherwell game. The Hearts game also didn't watch. So I went through those 3 games, and that's the whole season, the only ones I didn't watch. But emotionally, that's what I have to do. There's so many other plates being spun, and I know I'm not on my own in this in life. I actually struggle to handle those defeats. I struggle to handle those moments where I've given up. I've orchestrated my whole day to watch these buggers, and they've let me down. So I find that very, very difficult in a way that no one else in my world really cares about. You're like, no one in my offline world particularly is interested. And I also will keep it to myself because I'm not going to let a bad head from the football affect my family life, either my family or my partner's family. So it just doesn't exist. I'll just say the football, what I call them, the blue team were terrible today, or the blue team were good today. Like, I won't even get into it. She doesn't care either. But I will protect myself very black and white like that. So if I think it's a dead duck, I won't even bother now. And that's for far.
So envious. I'm so envious. Can I just say
it's envious. It is hard. It's hard to do it, but it makes it so much easier for me emotionally because the next day I need to get up and be businessman again. And I guess that takes up so much of my processing. So yes, I still love to go to games when I can get to go. But I took my son to the Hibs game actually because my parents didn't want to go because they didn't want to drive from England when it was completely dead. And we had a lovely time meeting Jack Butland behind the back and that sort of thing. But yeah, that's how I protect myself. Because like anything that you love, when it goes wrong, it really hurts, doesn't it? And I particularly feel that hurt.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what I find really difficult, James? And I know that your kids are into football as well. My son is now at the age where he is beginning to really feel defeats. Like when he was little, he was obviously he was obsessed with Rangers, but in a different way. That if we were watching an away game or a European away game, we were watching it on the television, and then if we get beat, he'd go like, right, I'm going to go out in the back garden, and I'm just going to finish off the game outside. Then he'd come back in and be like, do you know what? Don't worry, Mum, I just scored 3 out there, so it's actually finished like 7-5 or something like that. But he's now at the age where defeats and the way the season went this year has really started to impact him as well. So we are just living in a house of depression, but I know that your kids are probably not at that point.
Well, I don't know. The Hibs game, when I do get to go to the matches, I never leave a game. I've sat through some bad ones. The Unarea at Siceni, who don't even exist anymore, beating us 4-1 in the Champions League. That was a good one. Celtic 5-1s. You know, I've sat through some corkers, and I never leave a game. And this is a bit of a I've probably covered bits of this on Psychologists before, but I get very frustrated by players who don't shake everyone's hand after a game in defeat. I really don't like that. I think you have to, when you've been defeated, you've got to look your opponent in the eye and say thank you. That's your medicine. That's your moment. And James Jr. was with me for his first Ibrox home game, proper league game, at the end of the season there. And the Hibs fans were going mental. Celtic had just scored, you know, like that sort of thing was going on. And he was unfazed by this defeat. Like the whole thing for us was about meeting James Tavernier, which had also failed for the third time. For the third time. And this time he didn't cry at that. He didn't cry when we found out the news that he wasn't there and all this sort of stuff. The Jack Butland glove kind of helped. But at the end of the game, when all the Rangers fans had left, bar a few hundred, the players were still walking the pitch and the place was deserted. The Hibs fans, the energy from the Hibs fans, then he started crying. That was the moment that it was either so intimidating or it all struck him or it was hostile, whatever it was. That was his first feeling of football hostility. It was his first really raw feeling of a defeat, and he cried and we left. But you know what, like the next day, because I let him take the day off school, so we never got back till 11:30 or something, he went out in the afternoon. And so for homeschool, we went out and did football training because he was so inspired by meeting Jack Butland that's a really important thing for me. We are fully committed. That's why I turn off that's why I don't watch them back. You know, I am so committed to the point it hurts, or it can be harmful, probably. But in his case, I was just teaching that you stay to the end of a defeat and you look your opponent in the eye. And so we had to feel those Hibs fans in that moment. So yeah, he's just on the cusp. He's just been down as we record this evening to play at our local club out here at Stenhousemuir. So he's happy now that he's in the system and starting to do his thing. So yeah, but it's very important to develop the attitude of not just handling defeat, but growing through defeat. And that's probably my sports coach background hat jumping straight on there. But no, he's right at the start of this journey, and I'm looking forward to supporting him. And I remember being 9 years old. I've just because I'm packing up the house today. I've pulled out my original 1996 Scotland shirt from the Euros, McCoist number 9 on the back. I've got it out for the World Cup. I may have to drop a stone before I can wear it, but we'll work on that before the end of the tournament, assuming Scotland reach the final. And that day, 1996, obviously English child or Scottish child born in England, as I felt I always was, Paul Gascoigne, the Rangers player, just like balloons the ball over the Rangers player Colin Hendry's head, or if he wasn't the Rangers player, he either was or he wasn't by then. Maybe he wasn't quite Rangers player by then. It was maybe signed that summer. Balloons it over the Hendry's head, slides it past Andy Gorham. Like, it's just extraordinary. That conflict of being obsessed with Gascoigne, I suppose, but crying your eyes out because Scotland have lost as a 9-year-old. That was my first real big one in 1996, and here we are on the verge of a World Cup. Going to bring it all home for my son, and he's even my daughter's 4. She's giving it no Scotland, no party. So like, football fever is definitely coming to this. Well, not to this household because we're about to leave. It's coming to a household that we'll be living in very, very soon. But no, thank you. That's actually very good. He is right on the start of it, and that's, ladies and gentlemen, I think that is just a flavour of how these conversations would go. Cheryl and I have just come on here for 15 minutes, and 30 minutes later, we're going to tell you that in the next couple of episodes, we will be joined by Stevie Clifford and Davey Edgar of Four Lads and Heart and Hand, respectively. And then after that, we will see where life takes us. Thank you all very much for listening. Cheryl, any final words before I wrap us up?
I would just appeal, if there's anyone who listening that has a specific issue or a problem, I know, James, that you said you would put out a way that they can anonymously get in touch. If there are any kind of popular areas or topics that you guys want us to discuss or pick apart, or, please send us your thoughts, because I think it would be really, really useful to get some ideas of things that you guys want discussed too.
And echo those thoughts. Thank you, Cheryl. I would not advise writing your deepest, most personal storylines in the comments section, but you can email James at jcdcoaching.com. And if you look in the show notes on each service respectively, you will find an anonymous link there to submit something for us to talk about. Thank you for joining us here on Heart and Health. We've been James and Cheryl, and we'll speak to you again very soon.